They're pretty good, aren't they? Wow, thank you guys. Thanks so much. Gee. Wow. Well, we've been here 3 or 4 weeks now. Glad you keep coming back, or at least most of you do. I want to talk to you about wisdom. Have you heard that funny story about the man in a hot air balloon ride who realized he was lost? So he reduced his altitude and spotted a woman below, and so he descended to about 30 feet. Said, "Excuse me, can you help me? I promised a friend I would meet him an hour ago, but I don't know where I am." The woman below replied, "You're in a hot air balloon hovering approximately 30 feet above the ground. You're between 40 and 41 degrees north latitude and between 59 and 60 degrees west longitude." The guy said from the balloon, "You must be in information technology." "I am," she replied. "How did you know?" "Well," the balloonist answered, "everything you told me was technically correct, but I have no idea what to make of the information you gave me, and I'm still lost. Frankly, you've not been much help at all. If anything, you've delayed my trip." The woman below responded, "You must be in management." "I am," replied the balloonist, "but how did you know?" "Well," said the woman, "you don't know where you are or where you're going. You've risen to where you are due to a large quantity of hot air. You made a promise which you have no idea how to keep. You expect the people beneath you to solve your problems. The fact is, you're in exactly the same position you were in before we met, but now somehow it's my fault." There may never have been a time in human history when we've so desperately needed wisdom. We've got a lot of information, don't we? And we see so many contradictory news stories, so much misinformation, an avalanche of information, but a desert of wisdom. The cover story of a recent Time magazine says so much, with the image of a human wrist, you may have seen it, surrounded by unending information. It says 830 steps, 1,314 calories consumed, one message received, 85 degrees and sunny, 16 conversations, your heart rate, MapQuest, stock exchange. And the title was "Never Offline, the Apple Watch or Fitbit or whatever it might be, how wearable technology will change your life, like it or not." Yesterday I walked on the beach for a while, and 90% of the people were on their cell phones, I think. I understand that. In fact, technology is really exciting. I mean, it really is. What we can do now, what you can find, and how you can just tap Google or talk to Siri or whoever and find out amazing amounts of things. In fact, 90% of the people looking for a church now, do you know where they go first? The website. The website. And we're working on getting live streams so people can watch this when you're up north or where you're gone. Several of you told me you're going to be away the next 2 weeks. We're pretty close to that. A lot of people donate online. I mean, technology is pretty fascinating. It's amazing. In fact, our friend who I just met today, Ben, is enhanced technology with what's in front of him. In fact, I asked Jennifer if I could take her picture so I could put it on Facebook to let people know, because what a marvelous gift that you have here. That is offering people the ability to hear a sermon. Yeah. We'll put that on our website so people can know and you can let other people know. So I'm an advocate of technology. It's amazing. It's wonderful. But with this tsunami of nonstop information, much of which is just plain wrong or propaganda, and we've heard all about it, and Facebook's trying to correct, and Twitter and all that, and I don't fully understand that. What we increasingly need is wisdom, isn't it? The kind of wisdom that Proverbs or Solomon or Jesus talked about, that life-giving, life-sustaining. That's what we're talking about in our message today. Proverbs, let me just share with you 3 or 4 of these time-tested, not from above to below, but from below to above, that come through working with your hands, the kind of wisdom that's been garnered and fine-tuned over the centuries, that's found its place into the Bible in the book of Proverbs, that comes from artisans, people like my dad who worked with his hands, and like my grandfather who was a farmer. Proverbs 10:8 says, "The wise of heart will heed commandments, but a babbling fool will come to ruin. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever follows perverse ways will be found out." Proverbs 12:18, "Rash words are like the thrusts of a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing." You could also say rash posts on Facebook are like a thrust of a sword. 13:15 says, "Good sense wins favor, but the way of the faithless is their ruin." Or 13:20, "Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools suffers harm." 2 more, I love this. "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." And finally, how much better to get wisdom than gold? To get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver. Or Jesus, at the end of his Sermon on the Mount there in Matthew 5-7, he says, "Whoever hears these words that I speak and puts them into practice is like a wise person who builds his house on the rock. And when the storms come, it will withstand. But whoever hears these words and doesn't do them is like the foolish one who builds on sand, and his home will be destroyed." I would advocate that Jesus is the wisest person who ever lived. Sometimes in religious circles, we take that dimension away from Jesus. We're grateful that Jesus died for us. So we celebrate Christmas and we celebrate Easter and the resurrection, but we forget about that whole body in between of the wisest teachings anybody has ever been given. Wisdom, Sermon on the Mount, his parables. Or Solomon. Our scripture for today from 1 Kings chapter 3, verses 5-14. I think it'll come up on the screen. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream. He's just now following his father David to be the next king. And God said, "Ask what I should give you." And Solomon said, "You've shown great and steadfast love to your servant, my father David, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart toward you. And you have kept him for him the great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne today. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, although I'm only a little child. And I don't know how to go out or come in. And your servant is in the midst of the people whom you've chosen, a great people, so numerous that they cannot be numbered or counted. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, able to discern between good and evil, for who can govern this great people?" It pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this. And God said to him, "Because you've asked this, and have not asked for yourself long life or riches, or for the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right, I now do according to your word. Indeed, I give you a wise and discerning mind. No one like you has been before you, and no one like you shall rise after you. I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor, all your life. No other king shall compare with you. If you will walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your life. And then follows that amazing story of the two women who claim to be the mother of the same one child. And they brought this child and the two women to Solomon and said, who will decide? How can you decide? Who's the real mother? You know the story. It's famous. He listened to both arguments. He listened for a while, and then he said, well, cut the baby in two. Bring me a sword. And obviously the woman who was the mother says, no, let her have him. Solomon, great wisdom, said, here's the mother. Here's the mother. The world needs wisdom. But let's start with you and I. David Brooks, in an article recently called The Power of Human Touch, he begins this way. It seems the smarter we get about technology, the dumber we get about relationships. We live in a society in which loneliness, depression, and suicide are on the rise. The guiding moral principle here is not complicated. Try to treat other people as if they possess precious hearts and infinite souls. Everything else will follow. I think Jesus said something similar. Love your neighbor as yourself. You know, I like movies. Have you seen the movie Wonder? Anybody seen the movie Wonder? Oh, good. Some of you have seen it. What a great, great movie. It used to be in my history of the church, people would come to church just to hear the movie reviews that I would give them. This movie Wonder, it's based on a true story, and lots of 3rd and 4th grade classes across the country read this story. It's about a little boy who was born with a severely deformed face. 21 operations. Parents homeschooled it until he got to 5th grade, and they felt like it was time he just had to go out into the real world. He had all those operations, but still was fairly deformed. He wore an astronaut's helmet so that kids wouldn't poke fun at him. But he couldn't go to class that way. The parents in the movie, Julia Roberts and Owen Wilson, do all the right things, and they meet with the principal ahead of time. The principal pulls out 2 children or 3 who he thinks will be really good friends. 1 or 2 turn out not to be that way. And so you go with Owen, or go with Augie. Augie is his name. To school, and some of the kids are just incredibly cruel. Incredibly cruel. But there are others who are really kind. And there's this one exchange where the principal is talking to some of the children who were cruel and their parents. And he says this, Augie can't change the way he looks. Maybe we can change the way we see. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? That's why we come to church. That's why we connect deeply with God, so we can see as God sees. Not on the outward, but on the heart. With a discerning heart, a wise heart. Wisdom. Wisdom. Pope Francis, a few months back on his New Year's Eve message, gave tips on how to drive. I don't know if he drives, but he gave tips on how to drive, or how Jesus would drive. Because driving, there are the decisions we each make and have some control over. With constant technology, constant news, too much attention to the things that distract us and erode our souls Am I the only one that thinks we have too much attention going to Washington, D.C.? Regardless of what you think about President Trump, and I'm not here to argue one way or another, he can stir up the media, and it can consume us. It can consume us, over which we have almost, but very little control. So it's good to be reminded that the people who have the most influence on society are actually right here, are actually normal folks, everyday folks. I've often said normal is underrated. Through their normal, everyday gestures, being kind in public places, being a friend in need, person of grace. The Pope called these people artisans of the common good. I call them wise in the biblical sense. They don't give great speeches. They don't seek publicity. They usher at church. They sing in the band. They teach Sunday school. They pull weeds from the rose garden. Esther and I were here for a photograph session on Friday afternoon, and we ran across, I think, a woman named Terry Lee. She was pulling weeds out here, doing things to make life better. They go on mission trips. They help with the food pantry. They help replace an old truck. Or they grow raspberries. I've got a picture this summer. Last week I was in Virginia. And we went, as we always do up there, if we're there in July, to go pick blueberries, but they also have blackberries and they have red raspberries. And this guy, can we bring that picture up there? Bill is a counselor and teacher at our granddaughter's school, but he owns this farm, 3 acres, and he knows all about red raspberry. He knows there's 14 varieties of blueberries. He knows that these raspberries are called Prima something, and the blackberries, he said, now there's a row up there, because blackberries are a little bitter, but there's a row there called Triple Crown because it was developed near the racetrack of the Triple Crown in Maryland. Amazing. But he's influencing our granddaughter. Not Washington, D.C., not the news headlines. Let's bring life back to where it really happens. The Pope focused on driving, celebrating people who move in traffic with good sense and wisdom. The irony of this is I just got in the mail a ticket yesterday. I didn't know Clearwater had cameras that I evidently... Oh, you've been there too, huh? Do they have them here in St. Petersburg? Thank God, because I came pretty close today. I was running late this morning. At any rate, that's another story. Kindness begets kindness. Aggression begets aggression. A series of small, wise choices leads to better things. Wisdom often comes in small packages. Perhaps you've seen that YouTube video of Navy SEAL Admiral William McRaven. Do you remember that? Have you seen it? Speaking to the University of Texas graduating class, he shared some amazing wisdom. He said this: if you want to change the world, start by making your bed. If you want to change the world, start by making your bed, because the first task then it gives you a sense of pride and leads to the next task, then the next task, and the next task. The little things in life matter. And if you can't do the little things right, you're probably not going to do the big things right. He talked about a group of Navy SEALs in training. He said this one group is called the Short Guys, 5'5". American Indian, Polish American, African American, Greek, Italian, 2 Midwesterners. They out-paddled, out-swam faster than everybody else. He said they got to the mud flats between Tijuana and San Diego, and this is part of their training. At sundown, they ordered into the mud, 15 hours in the cold and wind. They're about to quit, 8 hours in, bone-chilling cold. Then one voice raised in song, off-key, out of time. And then a second, and then a third, and then everyone And his point was one person can give other people hope, as did Washington and Lincoln and King and Mandela and Malala and the British cave diver. One person can change the world by giving hope, but you begin by making your bed. You begin by doing little acts of kindness, wisdom. I'll close with this last story. I'm not a good filer. I don't know, Esther, if you're a good filer. I don't keep very good files. I know preacher buddies who do, but I did come across this thing I found. It goes back to July 13th, 1998. Our son had just graduated from Brown University, and he'd just gotten married in June. And he was a baseball player. He went to Brown to play baseball. This is an essay by Roger Rosenblatt called A Game of Catch. It's a great story. My son and I played baseball so many times. The All-Star game just took place. A game of catch, tossed back and forth. The ball expresses all that is between us. I might call it a game of understanding, a game of wisdom. He says this: summer's the season for it. I dream and see the children when they were children, one at a time, standing on a lawn or a playground, waiting for the ball to reach them, their hug-me arms wavering in the hot, wet air as if they're attempting to embrace something vast and invisible. Their eyes blink in the sunlight. They stagger and stumble. It's hard to learn to play catch. In the beginning, you use your arms to cradle the ball against your chest. Then you use both hands, and then one. And soon you're shagging flies like Willie Mays and firing bullets across your body like Derek Jeter, not having to think about the act. They don't call it a game of throw, though throwing is half the equation. The name of the game puts the burden on the one who receives. But there's really no game to it. Nobody wins or loses. You drop the ball, you pick it up. Once you've got the basics down, it doesn't matter if you bobble a ball or two, or if you can't peg it as far as you once could, or if you have to stare and squint to pick it out of the sky. And so we go back and forth in an essential gesture of sports. A ball travels between two people, each seeking a moment of understanding from the other. Across the yard, across the years. To play a game of catch is not like pitching to a batter. You don't throw to trick, confuse, or evade. You want to be understood. A shared wisdom. Rosenblatt says the poet Richard Wilbur once visited a poetry class I was in, and he told the girl who'd figured out a line of his, "It's nice to have someone catch what you're throwing." I imagine God feels that, don't you? He throws these things out here, and he delights in when we catch it. As the song sang, speaks these words, and things change, and we either receive it or we neglect it. The game of catch is an essential gesture of parenthood, too. When families are working well, everyone tosses to be understood. The best part of the game is the silence. We should find situations in which talk is unnecessary, and children can tacitly acknowledge the mystery of their connection and be grateful for it in silent play. Nietzsche said there's nothing so serious as a child at play, he could have added, or a grown-up either. And so I throw, and he catches, and he throws, and I catch. The ball wobbles so slightly in the bright stillness that one can almost count the stitches. And the heat and silence of the day fit us both like a glove. I toss the ball in looping arcs. My son snaps it up as if waving it away, and then tosses it back on the line with so much more on it. And so we continue until our faces glow with sweat and the sun drops and we're touched by the shadows of the trees. I ended this and said to my son, Darren, it's sure been nice having someone catch what I've been throwing. What's God throwing to you? Would you catch it? Wisdom comes in silence, in the listening, in the relationships, in the ordinary, in picking blueberries, making your bed, a game of catch, going to church. Wisdom. Would you pray with me? God, it's good to be here in this place, to take deep breaths as Reverend Esther's invited us to block out all of the information or misinformation or confusion. For we dare to believe that in the silence, the quietness of this place, we're becoming wiser. We're tuning in to what you're tossing to us, and we're more able to catch, to understand, to grow in wisdom. May it be so, and may it be so. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen. As the band